Okay, thank you for tuning in to Stampscaping 101. This is a stamp along scene. It's just a very minimal composition, featuring a couple tree stamps here and the sedge filler. We have some reeds down below, a cloud, and these little hikers, but for the most part, this foundation is established with 3 stamps. If you don't have all 3 stamps, meaning this tree, the tree trunk, tree, and sedge filler, if you have one of these or another, or if you have, you can do it with a pine tree if you want to, okay? You can do it with any tree. But what this is kind of about is just kind of building up a slope or a field, a grassy field in the background. I also have that stamp along, video featuring grass, but we do the exact same thing, but we're putting it in a setting with some objects in here. But for me, what this kind of stamp along is about is establishing kind of some shadows and lighting, okay? Meaning all I have to do where objects are within a given area, making the areas at the base of them a little bit darker, that anchors those objects into a scene. I think it really sets them into something like a piece, some grass. And if they're casting shadows, you're giving that, you're kind of establishing a lighting scheme, okay? Now, here's what I do in this stamp along video. We add some light browns to the trees, to the grassy area, and leaving some of these areas lighter, okay? Like in the middle right here. But now as I start moving into the darker tones, what I do is I start moving, I start adding kind of the darker tones, on this case, on the left side of the tree over here, and on the right side of the tree over here. Okay? That says that the light is coming from the center here. Okay? So it just means that you color out this whole thing light brown. Just when you start moving into your darker browns, just do it on one side. Alright? Now down here, I've added a lot of shadow down here, and when you get darker and darker with your dark tones, like dark greens, you just add it down here and not so much up here, okay? And then that creates your simple lighting scheme. Up here in the clouds, it's doing the exact same thing. It's just a much wider area. Here we have our central area of light, and in the darker areas, it's kind of more perimeter oriented, okay? I'm not bringing the light colors, or the darker colors, into this area. I don't bring the dark greens in here. So controlling your lighting is just a matter of mostly controlling your dark tones. So if I bring in light greens in here, just don't do that with that color of green, okay? And it makes it really easy. In this stamp along video, I do add some this little white paint pen for those little meadow spring blooms, and I think that really brings that area to life, and it's just really fun to add in there. And then in this scene right here, I just kind of anchor the trees down a little bit more with the use of an object. When you add in all these different greens like this, and you're adding tone over tone over tone, a lot of times in areas like this, it gets kind of, it's rich in terms of the color scheme, but from a textural standpoint, it kind of looks muddy. So I like to add things like this in the end, so I get a nice crisp impression, okay? And those little dots in there too provide a nice little crisp dot amongst an otherwise kind of soft general area, and I think that provides a nice contrast. So those types of things are easy to do. Just retain, or just wait for your, unless you're working with like a StazOn ink or something like that, where you're not worried about these types of things, blurring or smearing as you're adding in some extra tones or whatever. I kind of keep that for the end, to get a nice crisp impression. But overall, just a simple composition, like I said again, and if you've seen that grassy stamp along video, you can put that into effect if you did that one, and put it into a setting now. Very, very minimal masking in here. None really needed in the end result. I put that masked off this tree up there for that cloud, but you really don't have to, and that's what these stamps are all about. It's for ease of use, but I don't know, hopefully you get some nice dramatic results from it, you know, but you don't have to consider so many things as far as like the positioning of stamps go. So anyways, if you choose to stamp along with this one, I hope you enjoy it, and if you ever have any questions, as always, just leave a little note in the notes section or go to stampscapes.com and send us an email, okay? Thanks for watching and stamping. Okay, let's have some fun with a stamp along video here. In this scene we're going to feature these two tree trunk forms in simple composition. I'm going to color my tree with a little bit of dark brown, or a lot of dark brown. I'm going to place this tree trunk where it's going off the top of my paper. Okay, I don't want this to end abruptly, right, like that. So, just have it going off a little bit, or a lot, however much you want. You can have more of the forest floor by, you know, stamping this higher if you want to. I could go with the same tree in the background here, just, you know, if you stamp it kind of higher up, it represents something that's farther back. Now, these are the same size, so that would mean this tree is kind of larger, but you could go with something like that. Just for variation, though, I'll use this other tree trunk trio stamp. And again, stamping it in a dark color. You can add in some black if you want to as well, to put it in more shadow. And again, I'll have this kind of going off the top of my page, my card. This is a 4.25 by 5.5 inch quarter page, okay? So, we have our kind of our main subject matter in here as far as the structure of the composition goes. Now we need to set those two trees, or in this case I guess it would be four, but two designs, in a setting. Okay, now I'm just using this Sedge filler stamp in here. I don't need to mask anything off. I mean, you certainly could if you want to. I don't really feel the need to, because it's just tone in tone. If we were working with things like designs that were outlines, which I really don't have in the Stampscapes line, but you know, then you might have the need to mask something off, because if this was an outline design, you'd see these lines running through things. But if it's a few little dots running into another design made of dots, it's not really a big deal, right? So that makes it easy on us in terms of our approach. Maybe I'll try to add a little drama to this scene by having a little bit of a slant in the background rather than just a straight horizon, you know. It's coming down this way. I don't always do that, but you can. You know, add a little bit of something that might be a little more unexpected. It doesn't look unnatural, though, to me, having that kind of slope in there. Trees, sometimes, you know, trees grow on hills. All right. Okay, now I'm going to add in some additional imagery in here, but I think I'm going to do that afterward, okay? Let's see. I'm trying to think if I want to add anything into that sky. Could. Or do we want to just leave it as is? Maybe... No, I want to keep this simple. I was just thinking about maybe adding a moon or something in the background there. But then that would change the kind of the spirit. I want to go for something like daylight. Okay, so here's this cloud right here. I could stamp that in there if I want to, and that would kind of take care of that area. Let's do that. Now let's go with something fairly light. Okay, this is a light blue. You probably have some sort of light blue ink on you in your collection of stamp pads. I could just stamp this right on in there and I think it would look okay, but I will do some minimal masking. Why don't we go like something like this. Let's mask off a little bit of that tree and something like that. All right. Now I'm going to be missing it right in here, but well, I tell you what, let's go like this. And I'll have this cloud kind of coming in like about like so. If I have a little bit of this light blue in that dark brown tree, it's not going to be a big deal. So this is something like that, okay? And if we want to carry this idea out a little bit, we can hit some of the cloud over here, kind of just aiming for that horizon. And I'll go on this side right over here. We'll add some of that cloud form. If we can see that cloud form in the end, I don't know. We'll see, okay? I'll add that in there. Okay. Anyway, you can see I wasn't particularly careful at all. There is some of this light blue in that tree, but if there is, not going to matter. I guess I really didn't need to mask off anything, but I did avoid kind of going in here too much with like that portion of the cloud, because that portion is kind of dark, and that would leave a big area of light blue in there. Some of that light blue went in this meadow. Not to worry, that's not going to matter one bit. Which is what we want, right? We don't want to have to, we don't want to have a lot of those types of things to have to consider. I mean, you could be a lot more careful in terms of your approach to the usage of these designs when it comes to composition, but I just assume not have to, you know, think about all that type of thing. And I like things as easy as possible in order to achieve kind of a desired effect. Some things that, you know, take a little bit more, I don't know, planning, but by and large, I don't want to have to plan plot when doing cards too much. That's not where kind of the fun is for me in doing scenes. No, I like to challenge myself, but not with simple composition like that. You know what I mean? I'm not cutting out all kinds of masks and things like that, and positioning, you know, that type of thing. Okay, this is an antique linen. It's just a very light, you know, your light kind of beige-ish color, brown, any kind of tan if you have it. Okay, I'm running that in the trees, but I'm also going to run it in my grass. The grass is going to end up being, you know, kind of green, but I find that when you just use only green in grassy areas, it looks kind of weird. Having some brown kind of tones in there, earthy tones, kind of mellows it out. To me, it looks more, I don't know, the word is realistic, but it looks more natural, I guess. Maybe that's the word. Okay, now, I would recommend leaving a little bit of variation in here. Don't color in everything, you know, to the full extent of whatever color you're working with. Okay, so I left it a little bit lighter in here, just to get a little bit of variation happening within that space. You know, if you look at it like even your lawn, chances are, you know, there's going to be some shadows being cast by clouds, whatever. So some areas might be a little bit lighter than others. Here's a distressing tea dye. If you don't have it, don't worry about it. If you have another variation of some sort of brown, you can add that in. Now see what I'm doing too. I think I'm going to go for a little bit of variation starting with this second color. I'm going to color in this side of the tree. So see, this side being a little bit lighter like that makes the tree seem a little bit more dimensional and round, okay? Now I like shadows too being cast by objects, okay? It gives them a sense of, it anchors them down to their whatever they're in, but it also, you know, gives it kind of a sense of, I guess, opacity, you know. They're not just transparent trees, you know, like a ghost or something like that. They're casting a shadow, you know, because light isn't coming through them. So what I do is I kind of, in these trees, I kind of have this shadow going out this way, and this one goes out this way. So it looks like the light is kind of coming from in there. That's kind of the direction that I'll start working these shadows in. Kind of the shadow is coming out in perspective, even though I don't have a lot of room down here for you, but you can see it's starting to get anchored by it a little bit. Okay, let's add that same, let's keep working on a little bit of variation up here in the grassy area. Okay. So you can see this light and dark thing starting to happen in here a little bit. Okay. Now, some sort of, you can go with another brown if you want to. I'll probably add in some more. But I think I'll stick to kind of my light tone still. Let's try this Distress Ink peeled paint. Go with the lightest kind of yellow-green that you have. Some people have, you know, super bright yellow-green, like, say, something like this, okay? If you do it, just kind of tap it off a little bit so you're going on with a kind of a paler one. Now, if you're working with colored pencils or something like that, or Copics or markers of that sort, then you'll have a lot, probably, if you have those colors, you can potentially have a lot more control, especially things like pastels. You can just add more or less, and that makes it lighter or darker, okay? Okay, but still, don't forget about your kind of lighting scheme, meaning keep your light areas a little bit lighter. Now, mine was white, so I'm going to run in some of this green in there. I don't want it just so white, okay, in there. I want a little bit of color. But I might not want it in the full saturation. I might want kind of a lighter version of it, so meaning a drier version of it will give me a lighter, in this case, an impression of it. You know, you're making kind of impressions of your sponging color in there. Okay, now I might want a little bit of green on my trees. You know, maybe the trees are kind of old and they have a little bit of moss on them. Running some of that green up there gives it something in relation to the surrounding color scheme. Okay, let's try some other greens here. Here's a Marvy jungle green. Here's a pale green. Maybe we'll use some of this bright green. Let's go with this yellow green right here. I have a feeling it's going to really brighten up some areas. You can brighten up your shadows, right? Bright doesn't mean light. It just means kind of more vibrant, you know, in terms of the color intensity. It'll mellow out because we're going to use some darker ones in there over the top of it, but kind of these lighter, bright ones can provide a nice foundation and kind of contribute to this kind of color glow that happens in the end result. Jungle green, it's about, looks like the exact same value as bamboo leaves from Memento. Let's try the Memento. Let's see what color that is. Okay, it looks a little bit darker. Okay. When you start moving into your darker tones, be a little bit more selective now in terms of where you add that, because we don't want to kind of obliterate that lighting scheme that we were working with, okay? See that right there? Now it's casting a deeper shadow. Okay, and I have a little bit of a darker tone kind of running up on my horizon just to kind of create a little bit of a separation between land and sky. Okay. Let's see if the jungle green kind of adds a darker tone yet. I think it is. It's just slightly darker. It's kind of nice when you have a range of values, because you can kind of work incrementally darker as opposed to jumping from something really light to something, you know, a lot darker than it. Although you can do that, though, if you don't. Okay, this is going back to brown. You know, it's going back to that same type of hue that was used to stamp out our imagery with the trees and grass, sedge filler. Okay. Introducing this color into the tree as well. This is just your brown from Marvy. It's, yeah, you can use like a walnut or something like that. Distress ink. And there's a lot of other colors, just, you know, kind of a neutral brown, medium tone brown, bringing it down into the grass as well. You can see my kind of shadows starting to develop even more. All right, running that brown on the left side of this tree and the right side of this one. So I don't know, this one that's really thin, so I'm not kind of turning it, you know, in space too much, but in terms of my use of shadow, when I say turning it, you know, having it kind of multi-toned from one side to the next. All right, now let's try a darker green. All right. Let's try this Memento Cottage Ivy. I can go with the Marvy green as well, but just trying to use some colors that people might have more of sometime. Okay, you can tell it's pretty dark. Okay, sticking to my shadows. See how nice those shadows kind of look now, and I have that kind of coming out at an angle like that? That's when it, I don't know, a scene starts to kind of come alive, is when things seem to be put in their place. It looks, like I said, kind of more natural, like that. Right at the base of that tree, I'm kind of hitting it with a little bit more ink, where the tree meets the foundation, like so. Okay. But now let's hit some of this area in the background with the same color. I'm not doing this right side up because it's just easier for me to get my hand in here like that, okay, than going like this, you know. My hand doesn't work that way, and I can kind of avoid certain areas, so see, when I turn it like that, it's just easier to work. So turn the card, and, you know, ergonomics is important as far as whatever you do, and luckily, you know, with us and card making, we're working on a size that you know, it's easy to just spin around. If we're working on this 40 by 60 inch canvas or something like that, you know, you're not really, you're moving, you know, around, but you know, there's only so much you can kind of do, right? See this right in here, I'm just kind of adding some variation here and there. See it in here, and we have our lights remaining. Okay. All right, now here's the thing that we're getting up to that should really, I hope, bring this together even more. Okay, we've stamped it out in dark brown. Now, with that same dark brown tone, let's kind of anchor the scene even more, okay? The objects with the same color that it was stamped in. And you can certainly come up into the tree as well, which I'll do. Maybe on the side of this tree I'll add some of this dark brown. And I'm kind of like, I'm doing this too. I'm not doing this, okay? I often work on my edge of my sponge like that for kind of the more detailed areas, narrow areas. Okay, and how about the side of this tree? Working on the left side of the tree. See that? That's kind of fun there, doing those shadows like that. Okay, now I haven't forgotten about the sky. The sky is very bare right now and unbalanced. I mean, that cloud really stands out because it looks so minimal right now. So let's add in some additional tone up there and we'll start doing some sky treatments of color. Go with some sort of color that you could go with the same color that you stamped your sky, your cloud in. In my case it was salvia blue, Marvy. But if you have like a light blue of some sort, I was looking to see if I had it. I don't. I think I was just looking at it online. I can't remember that real kind of blue. I have green in this. Let me. Okay, it looks like this one's clean right here. I think it's called tumbled glass. It's distressing. I'm gonna have to get that one. It's a nice kind of crystalline blue looking one, at least in terms of the case, the pad case. Okay, now I'm running this into my sky, kind of around those clouds, defining the edge of the cloud by the use of tone or over it. Okay. So you make the tone up here, that blue, and the cloud, by contrast, should kind of stand out a little bit. Okay, now if you want to use some of this little blue down in your meadow as well, your grassy areas, you can do that. Now this is a really light one, okay? It's a shadow stamping, so it's really light, so I'm just taking it right in there. If you're using a darker blue, then kind of blot it off a little bit first. Okay, if you want to bring in some of this into your cloud as well, you can. Like right in the middle here, just so certain areas kind of stand out a little bit more than others. Retain some of the lights, though, of your cloud. That's what I would recommend. Okay, going with the same color that I used to stamp my clouds in, I'll do the same exact thing. If you didn't have kind of a lighter version of the blue that you just that you stamped your cloud in, just go ahead and start off with that one. Okay, as you can see, I don't have to mask off my trees, to put this tone. I'm just toning right over the top of them, not really even worrying about it. If I get some blue up into that tree, it's not a big deal. And as you can see, I'm running my blue down, right into my meadow as well, or that grassy area, and it's not a obtrusive because I have darker colors of green, so if you run a light blue transparent dye-based ink over the top of a darker color like this, you know what I mean, it's not going to show up. The darker color is going to be the thing that shows. Alright, so that is that. That's looking pretty good to me. Now, I could go with some additional variations in here, but in the spirit of the stamp-along video, let's keep it simple, okay? Let's stop at that tone. We have some deep shadows down here. We've reached a nice kind of color saturation. The scene looks fairly rich to me. Okay, I lied. Let me go with one more tone. Let's just kind of frame off our scene a little bit more with a little bit of a darker blue on the left and right side. I think that'll look really good. It's looking, I don't know, it's looking kind of picture booky, so I thought maybe a little bit of a darker tone here just to balance things off. This is a light blue. What was it? I think the Memento Bahama blue. Yeah, Bahama blue would be good too. I'll use that. Okay, they're roughly the same hue. Okay, I think that looks a little bit more complete. Things were so rich down below, I wanted to kind of bring the saturation of the top area up a little bit. I won't touch in here though, I don't think. Let's just go with this, okay? So, that is that. So we have a nice little composition right here, right? The trees look fine. They're set into the grass. Now, one of the things that I like to do too, all right, is I like to add, things get kind of soft in here. There's variation and it's rich and everything like that, but texturally, sometimes I find those areas a little bit, well, I don't know, kind of monotonous from a textural standpoint, okay? Not from a color standpoint or a value standpoint, you know, in terms of light and dark. But what I like to do in my grassy areas like that is I have to add in some kind of nice crisp element. And kind of at the base of trees like this, I find that a little bit of texture kind of comes in handy. It kind of anchors those objects in the scene even more. So here's something like these reeds, any kind of little craggly, you know, these are the winter twigs that I just used on the previous one would be good too. Having just some of those, you know, within the meadow looks good. Now see where I'm putting this right here? I'm putting this right at the base of this tree, okay? Maybe go for a few impressions of it, like so. See that? Something like that. It's these little things that you can do, you know, that I think help a scene out, okay? But then now, I'm not just going to leave it at that. Alright, now let's add a little bit of these in the foreground, okay? Too, so we'll kind of layer that depth a touch. If you have the larger one, that'll work fine too. It'll just give you some larger forms. Because after all, this is grass right in here, you know, through the whole thing, so you can do something like that, okay? And if you want to add some people in here, you can do that. It's kind of a nice little window or a setting for something like an animal. You can do some birds up here, but it's kind of like a natural frame, you know, talking about natural elements. To me, this looks like a stage for something. So I think I'm going to use, I haven't used this hiker male female in a while. Okay, now in one of my lessons I mentioned kind of taking your objects, if they're walking in grass, and I kind of wipe off the bottom a little bit, you know, where they're, maybe their shoes. I don't want them up to their waist in, you know, grass, but I do want them to be kind of set in the grass a little bit, so kind of obscuring their feet will do it. I can put, I don't know, maybe I'll put these a little bit farther in the background like that. You know, maybe where they're going up in that sky even. Something like this. Okay. Now they would be good to color with a little bit of a, you know, some alcohol pens or something like that going in there and touching them up. But that's a nice little foundation right here. Now, not to get complicated or anything like this. This one's going to be a very simple use of some additional details, but I'm just taking my white gel pen. You can certainly use some colors too and add some flowers or something like that into your meadow. I'll say this is some Pearly Everlasting or something like that. And you can really make that kind of that springtime meadow come alive with these little clusters of kind of white flowers. Kind of cluster them together a little bit. I think that looks really good. Maybe it's Edelweiss. I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm just, you know, I believe they're white. They have to be, right? Based on the song. Okay, kind of going crazy with that, but I think that's kind of fun. Let's see here. See that? I mean, I think that really adds to it. Cluster them a little bit. I've mentioned this in previous videos, but it seems like whenever we kind of use this, you know, for the first time, like adding little dots or something like that, everyone kind of spaces all the dots kind of perfectly, like an eighth of an inch apart from each other. It's just, I don't know, there's something inborn, you know, we kind of start, you know, doing these patterns or something, you know. In fact, I still have to kind of fight that urge to, you know, to do that. See, I'm kind of going back in and clustering a little bit more and overlapping some of those dots. But see, that kind of really brings it to life, I think, you know. Let's hit it somewhere in here, maybe. It just makes it kind of, I don't know, it adds the charm, I guess you can say, to that. It's an element of crisp, just like doing these reeds down here adds this crisp element to the scene. That's kind of a reverse crisp little element in terms of that little dot in there, too, wouldn't you say? But anyways, you can see by anchoring down your objects. Now, if this was a big rock or something like that, I would do the same thing. I would make the area down at the base darker. Now see, this is darker out here, but as it kind of gets towards the light, it's a little bit lighter and lighter until it's light like that. It's not just this harsh line like dark, you know. like black and white or something like that. It kind of transitions, okay? Leaving a little bit of area of light up there kind of allows your viewer's eye to go up there, which means all you have to do to achieve this type of thing is just where you kind of establish your light and darks, don't touch those areas with the darkest of colors. You can come into them with your light and medium tones. Maybe you're coming in with medium tones, just have it really dry on your brush. If you're working with colored pencil, of course, just use a lighter pressure of it and use less of it, you know, that type of thing. All right. So, I mean, something like this in these trees too, you want to add some little, like a marker detailing, like some Copics, that would look really good too. I'm not going to do that in this one because I don't want these stamp-along videos to run 1 hour. But those people in the distance there could certainly use a little bit of color. I'm wondering if they're kind of dry enough yet. Let's see. It's a little bit wet. I'm kind of smudging a little bit, but that's okay. I give her a little kind of a pinkish dress. I'll give this guy a kind of tan color. I don't know, maybe he's wearing a kind of a red backpack or something, or orange. Let's give her more of an orange skirt, just so they stand out a little bit. I'll put him in a white shirt, meaning that I'll put just add a little bit of a tone to it. Okay, something like that, and right at their base. Okay, these people in the background, ew, too dark, can use a little bit of a shadow as well, I think, right? I'm looking for the right tone. Well, let's just start off with this light green. Let's see how that goes. This is an alcohol marker, by the way. This one's going to be too dark, but I'll blend it out a little bit. Well, it's not overly dark, okay? So that right there, it's just kind of at their base. You wouldn't see a big pronounced shadow like that because they're way off in the distance. Actually, that doesn't look too bad as is. But I think those little details are a lot of fun, and they're super easy to do. Now I'm just kind of blending that out with a little bit of a, it's not a blender pen, but it's just a lighter pen. Okay. One of the things, the fun thing is about alcohol inks is you can kind of move it around on glossy cardstock. Okay. All right, so there a little bit. That was kind of a big fuss for that little shadow there, but see how it's a little bit darker now underneath them. But when you look at it from a distance, I think that looks better now. So see, they're kind of in the grass a little bit by obscuring their feet. A little bit of shadow down there to relate to these shadows over here. Fun little reeds down here. That's really fun to add in there in the end. It's when everything kind of comes alive from a textural standpoint. So anyway, hope you had fun with the stamp along. It's kind of a nice scene to do. Last couple scenes I've done have been kind of more on the 1 hour type of mark. So it's kind of fun to get back into this little scene like this. A few tones brown, a few tones green, a couple tones of blue up there. Shadows down below. Very minimal use of my dark tones, you know. This is like a 1 inch and 1/2 inch area of it. And little things to bring that area alive right in the background like that. Little white pens can be really fun. So anyways, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the stamp along and stamping along with me if you did that or are going to do that. and just reiterating, if you, I think I mentioned it, if you don't have like this tree and this tree, you can use the same one twice, or you can use this one twice, or if you have other versions of trees, you can do that. Some things like the birch trees or something like that in our line are a little bit more airy, so you might have to do a little bit more masking, because the birch trees, after all, they're not supposed to be like, solid masses like this, They're white, amongst a, maybe a darker background to make them stand out a bit. But you can use whatever trees you want to. Just remember your kind of little shadow effects, and I think that really sets them in whatever kind of objects you're working with within the scene. So thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it.